So, in terms of let's talk a little bit about something that I think conductors never talk about is nerves.
Oh, that's a big one.
Why is that a big one?
I think because there's this total myth that we're supposed to be authorities, number one, and that we're supposed to be a boss, number two, which I think in most business structures now we recognize that those are kind of fallacies in terms of management structures, that actually
Mhm.
there are people who enable other people to do their work, and there are helpers, and there are different areas of expertise and things, but actually the whole beehive, no, all of the worker bees are important, um, and essential in different ways. Um, but I think also because of the history of orchestras and conductors, there's often, especially with bigger orchestras and much older orchestras, that have been working for donkey's years, a kind of an invisible wall often. They're expecting you to be kind of an autocrat, or to be rude, or to be incompetent, or so there's often a pre-built wall that you have to get through.
Mhm.
I suffer hugely from nerves, particularly before a first rehearsal. Concerts don't bother me at all, and I've heard this from so many colleagues. It's the first rehearsal that's scary, because you have that thing of, okay, especially if you're under the age of 50 or 60, it's probably the first time you're doing the work, or may
Mhm.
well be, and often it's the first time you meet this orchestra. And I suppose for the people listening, if you think about, if every week you have 4 days of being a CEO of a different company, and you have to go in and make it an incredibly successful company in those 4 days, and then leave, and you probably won't see them for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the following week you go to a different company and do it. It's it's such a short and intense time to build productive relationships. Um,
That's a great way of putting it, the CEO. And also the fact that, especially when you're a young conductor, you are performing works that for the first time that somebody in the orchestra has performed more times and more years than you've been alive. Um,
yes,
it's just at first it's just plain intimidating. It's just plain,
yeah.
But that's exactly
And I don't like feeling like my role is pointless, like that. And that sounds egotistical, but it's sort of like, it feels the opposite actually. It's like I had a week last year with the BBC Phil, and the first half of the week we did a piece by Schrecker and a piece by Eber, which no one had ever played or heard of. So it was like, okay, there's a really specific reason why it's me here doing these pieces with these people, because I know more about these pieces. There's something I can bring to the room that's of value. And then in the second half of the week, we did Dvorak 8. And I was just like, I mean, I just feel like a placeholder.
yeah.
You guys have, you're teaching me the piece at this point. And it felt so uncomfortable. Um, but then if I think about repertoire with a capital R, and in terms of things like opera or ballet, when you've got a service to who's on stage, the singers or the dancers, that's then you feel, no, no, there's a reason people are paying me to be here, because I'm watching and I can help you, and I can make it different tonight for you because you have longer legs, and I know it takes you a while to get around the stage,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
um, so it's that, I, it's if you feel like you're a placeholder or
Hmm.
irrelevant in some way, I find that very difficult.
It can be, and I know exactly what you mean.
I
Speaking
don't know,
about,
how about you? Do you get nervous?
oh, absolutely, I get nervous. I get nervous. And it's exactly what you said. It's the first rehearsal. That is when I get the most nervous because I don't feel, interestingly, I just can't. I don't feel nervous when I feel like I'm the one who's holding everything together. So, for example, I did one concert with San Francisco Symphony where we had one rehearsal of 90 minutes. The first half, 45 minutes, was a rehearsal with two different soloists and three different choirs and dancers and this and that, da, 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 da. And then we have a quick break and then we run the whole half an hour show and it's just like, okay, it's this, it's that, and you're just calling the shots, right? What is trickier is if you're doing your first rehearsal as a young conductor, say when I was in Kitchener, and I'm doing my first full-on Baroque rehearsal with musicians that have been part of one of Canada's leading Baroque ensembles. Oh, that can be very uncomfortable for everything you just said. Absolutely I deal with that. Concerts, I usually, yeah, concerts, I don't get nervous for concerts. I don't get nervous for concerts. And one of my great things is I don't get nervous for public speaking either. So talking to a group of 10,000 people feels emotionally to me exactly the same as having this conversation with you right now, except it actually feels better because I'd be able to see the people, right? So I'm very lucky that I don't get nervous, and talking to large groups of people actually really relaxes me, right? But sometimes what makes me nervous is if you're talking to an orchestra that just did this piece yesterday with a Mozart specialist or whatever, and now you're going to talk about Mozart as well too. Just like, okay, so then you have to study a lot,
Yeah.
But I think it's really helpful to know that, like, even though I think a big part of conducting, what I might say to myself 20 years ago is just keep going. And that's what I would say to young conductors too, young musicians, is just keep going, because right now I don't have the same experience that maybe some of the musicians I'm working with will. But 20, 25 years from now, I will have what they've taught me and I'll have more experience, and then it'll be okay. It'll feel better. And then we can really, give back
Yeah.
ways. So I think we just have to keep on going.
I think I think part of it as well is sort of acknowledging and accepting which stage of the journey you're on, and that that's a valid place to be. That it's okay that this is your version of Brahms at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely fine that in 30 years you'll listen back to the recording and go, that was rubbish. That's fine. Both of those responses are fine. But I was thinking as you're saying that, I had this really amazing moment in a rehearsal once where I kept feeling myself looking down to the concertmaster, kind of needing approval or encouragement, and did I do okay with and I just, bless her, I just saw her go, oh, after a while, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's not your job to make me feel good about mine.
Right.
I release you, concertmaster. You're allowed to think I'm rubbish. You're allowed to think I'm mediocre. You're allowed to not even know who I am because you haven't looked up once. That's fine. What all I need to do is do the best of, do my job to the best of my ability today, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that was such a release to stop seeking approval from the orchestra, and stop trying to get them to like me, and you know oh god.
That's such a great, but I love how that came. I love how that lesson came through the eye roll of the concept.
Yeah.
Oh, enough.
Absolutely, we've all been there, god.
Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. And I think there are, not that that's a moment of sparks flying, but there's a respect that comes from that, from her to you and from you to her. It's like, yeah, we're working on this together. I don't need you to like me, and that frees her or them up to do what they can do to the best of their ability. So
Yeah,
let
because the other side of it all is that a lot of players struggle with nerves as well, and
right.
they have to keep that hidden from their colleagues, and they have their own ways of dealing with it, and sometimes, as with conductors, it projects out in all sorts of appropriate or inappropriate ways in the workplace. I've certainly known a lot of players over the years who are very, very heavy drinkers to try and quell their nerves before rehearsal. But here's a great tip, and this is for everyone listening in. If you're feeling the nerves before anything at all, and a bass clarinetist, a lovely man, told me this. He came up to me and he said, Holly, in his British accent, Ollie, I get the feeling you get a bit nervous sometimes. I was like, yes, Duncan, I do. And he said, bananas. I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, bananas, eat a banana. And bananas are a natural beta blocker. If you have it 20 minutes before whatever it is you're nervous about,
Right.
you'll be fine. And it's so funny because I remember when I was a librarian years ago, and there were so many conductors, Dochnani, Marzell, all these big kind of, they all had a plate of bananas on the rider to be in the dressing room before the first rehearsal.
Really.
Yeah. And
And
I asked Marzell about nerves once, and he said he remembered when he was a young man, and I don't know if anyone watching ever met him or saw him or went to his concerts, but he could be he was lovely as an older man, and I really loved getting to know him. But as a young man and in his middle age, he was a real tyrant. He threw a chair at a horn section once because a horn player was reading a newspaper in London, the orchestra I worked for. And then he'd storm off and shut himself in his dressing room. He was really tyrannical. But I asked him about it once, and he said, "You know, I was just so terrified. I was so nervous, and I knew that everyone in that room knew 20 times what I did, and I felt like I had to stand there and pretend I knew more, and I acted like an idiot." And I thought, gosh, that is a lesson for a young conductor right there.